The Appalachian Trail is a hiking path in the eastern United States. Much of the 2,000-mile trail passes through wilderness areas. In order to navigate, would be my guess, or pass through those areas, the United States Congress passed the National Trail System Act, ensuring that the trail would not be sold or commercially developed. So I'm going to change that. So the idea is they wanted to preserve it, not navigate it. So in order to preserve these areas, change in my guess given the context of the next sentence. So let's see what answers might match. Borrow it? No, you're not borrowing it and plan to give it back. Postpone it? You're not delaying it. Protect it. So if you preserve it, you want to protect it. That's the right idea. Decorate, again, that's to embellish. That's not right. The following text is adapted from such and such's 1912 short story, Mrs. Spring Fragrance. Mr. and Mrs. Spring Fragrance immigrated to the United States from China. Mrs. Spring Fragrance was unaware that Mr. Spring Fragrance, tired with the day's business, had thrown himself down on the bamboo settee on the veranda, and that although his eyes were engaged in scanning the pages of the Chinese world, his ears could not help receiving, and this is the word we most want to understand, the words which were borne to him through the open window. He could not help receiving the words which were borne to him through the open window. So there's an open window. He was listening in, right? He was listening to, let's see, denying? No, he wasn't saying, oh, I deny those words. Entering, he could not help entering the words. You don't enter words. Carrying the words? No, it's not like he was trying to bring them with him somewhere. Hearing. He could not help hearing the words that were coming in. They were being borne in, probably on the wind and on the air through the open window. He could overhear it. While we can infer information about climate activity in Earth's distant past from physical evidence, we of course cannot observe past climates directly. Well, of course not. You can't go back in a time machine. To study early Earth's climate in action, we must that climate using computer models. We must investigate that climate. No. Well, let's keep going. We'll get a better context. To study Earth's early climate in action, we must blank that climate using computer models that represent various climate conditions consistent with the physical evidence. So we must create, develop, create, but we really wouldn't be creating Earth's climate in action. We must create that climate using models. We must admit something like that climate using models that represent various climate conditions consistent with we must, that part is throwing me off a little bit. Let's look. We must invent that climate using models, simulate that climate using computer models that represent, exaggerate. We don't want to exaggerate. That's too much. We might want to preserve. To climate in action, we must preserve that climate. No, we want to sort of create or admit. So it's going to be simulate or invent. I wonder if that's a typo, perhaps. To study Earth's climate action, we must, the idea is we can't observe it directly, right? That was our clue. So we must simulate that climate. It's going to be simulate that. Now it's not a typo. That makes sense. We need to simulate that climate, that is the early past climate that we can't observe directly, using computer models that represent various climate conditions. That's the right answer, not inventing. Took a couple seconds there to quite put it in context with the word that was throwing me off. Simulate that makes sense. In 1877, 85% of California's railways were already controlled by the Southern Pacific Railroad. The company further solidified its in-rail access to the state's Pacific coast. Its monopoly, its control, or domination A couple different guesses here. Rail access to the Pacific coast when it completed the Sunset Route in 1833. Okay, good. We're getting a colon. Running from Louisiana to Southern California, they established the first transcontinental rail line across the United States. So the company further solidified its holdings in rail access, or its coverage in rail access to the state's coast. Something like that. So dominance, monopoly dominance, that looks good. Let's check the others. Creativity, it's not about being creative. Insignificant, no, it's significant apparently. And it's not neutral, it's the dominance. It's monopoly control, it's dominance. Monica Lopez Ferreira and others at Brazil's Butantan Institute are studying the freshwater stingray species such and such to determine whether biological characteristics such as the ray's age and sex have effect on the toxicity of their venom. Have any effect? Significant effect? Would be my first guess. That is, so we're going to get a restatement here to see if differences in these traits are associated with considerable variations in venom potency. So significant effect. So considerable would be significant. Same kind of idea. Disconcerting. No, that would mean I'm uncomfortable with it. Acceptable. No, it's not just about being acceptable. It's about being considerable or a significant effect on toxicity. Imperceptible. Have an imperceptible effect, possibly, but the idea is not, no, I mean, that's the opposite of considerable here. They want to know if there's any real effect. It's a substantial. Significant, considerable, substantial is the right synonym or right word to match in the context.